You spend enough years on the road, you'll learn a few things. You learn the rhythm of the engine is the only heartbeat that matters for weeks on end. You learn that coffee from a greasy spoon in Nebraska tastes better than anything a fancy restaurant can serve. And you learn that every long, dark stretch of asphalt has its ghost. Most of them are just stories, of course, bull dust traded over CB radios to keep your eyes open when the white line fever sets in, the phantom headlights of a '57 Chevy, the crying woman on the shoulder outside Flagstaff. You hear them all. You nod, you say, "Stay safe out there," and you forget them by the next state line. But some stories, some of them stick. They get under your skin like road grime you can't wash off.
There's a place in Wyoming, a God-forsaken stretch of I-80 where the wind never stops screaming and the sky is too big for its own good. It feels like the loneliest place on earth. And out there, sitting dark and dead by the side of the road, is an old abandoned way station. It hasn't been operational for 30 years. The paint is peeled clean off, the windows are boarded up, and the approach ramp is cracked and sprouting weeds. It's a skeleton picked clean by the Wyoming winter. But the legend says it ain't entirely dead. The big digital display board above the scales, the one that's supposed to show your gross vehicle weight, sometimes it flickers to life, just for a second as you pass by.
The old-timers, the real road dogs who've been driving since their logbooks were actually made of paper. They have the rules. It's a simple two-part curse. If you're driving past and that sign flashes on, showing the exact weight of your truck and trailer, you're in for some bad luck. Your very next load, your next dispatch, no matter where it's going, will be a coffin. You'll be hauling a dead man. They say it's the station weighing a soul for its final journey. It's a creepy thought, but in our line of work, you haul what they tell you to haul. Freight is freight. But there's a second part, a much, much worse part. Sometimes, the legend goes, the sign doesn't show you numbers. It just flashes two words in that sickly, orange-red glow: overweight. If that happens, you got a bigger problem than your next job. It means you're not alone in your truck. It means the scales have detected a passenger you didn't pick up, and whatever it is riding with you.
For 15 years, I drove past that station dozens of times. Never saw a thing. I laughed it off with the rookies at the truck stops. Just a campfire story for grown men. Then came that January runner. A blizzard was howling down from Canada. A real monster. Dispatch wanted a load of medical supplies in Salt Lake City, and they wanted it there yesterday. Every other route was getting shut down, but I-80 was, for the moment, still open. They called it a window. I called it a suicide run. The snow was coming down so thick, it was like driving through milk. My wipers could barely keep up, and the wind was trying to tear the trailer right off my fifth wheel. I was white-knuckling it, staring into the swirling vortex of white, just focusing on the 2 feet of road I could see in front of my headlights.
I was so focused, I almost didn't notice it. A faint, flickering glow off to the right. My blood went cold. It was the way station. I could barely make out its shape through the storm, a darker shadow against the whiteout. And the sign, the damn sign, was on. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I told myself it was just my tired eyes playing tricks, the snow reflecting my own lights back at me. I kept my foot steady on the accelerator. Don't look, just keep driving. But you know how it is, you have to look. As my cab drew level with the scale, the orange digits burned through the blizzard, clear as day. They weren't random, they weren't flickering gibberish. It was a number. And even with the ice and snow kicked onto my rig, I knew, deep in my gut, I knew with the terrifying certainty that was my exact weight.
The rest of the drive to Salt Lake City was a special kind of hell. Every gust of wind that shoved my rig felt like a hand pushing me toward the shoulder. Every rattle and groan of the trailer sounded like something shifting inside, something that wasn't supposed to be there.
I had the CB on, but it was nothing but static. The storm had killed all communication. It was just me, my engine, and the image of those glowing orange numbers burned into the back of my eyelids. By the time I rolled into the depot in Utah, the sun was trying to break through the clouds, and I was running on nothing but caffeine and pure, undiluted fear. I dropped the trailer, signed the papers, and tried to act normal. The guys in the yard were complaining about the storm, the delays, the cold. I just nodded along, my mind a million miles away, stuck back on that dark highway in Wyoming. I tried to rationalize it. A short circuit? A freak power surge from a lightning strike, maybe. Snow messing with the electronics. Anything but the legend. I spent my mandated 10-hour break in the bunk of my truck, but I didn't sleep. I just laid there, listening to the silence, feeling like a man waiting for a verdict.
The call came the next morning. It was dispatch. "Got a priority run for you," the voice on the phone said, chipper and oblivious. "Picking up an SLC, heading east. It's a special handling load. Delicate." "What is it?" I asked, my throat dry. "Doesn't say. Just a single container. Says here, human remains. Going to a funeral home in Omaha." The phone felt slick in my hand. My breath hitched. Omaha. That meant taking I-80, back the way I came. I opened my mouth to refuse, to make up an excuse. The truck's acting up. I'm sick. I quit. But the words wouldn't come out. What was I supposed to say? A ghost story scared me? I'd be a laughingstock, out of a job before I could even hang up the phone. "You there?" the dispatcher asked. Yeah, I'm here. Send me the details."
Picking it up was the strangest experience of my career. It wasn't at a warehouse or factory. It was at the back of a quiet, respectable-looking morgue. Two somber men in suits oversaw the loading. They used a special forklift to place a single, long, heavy crate in the very center of my 53-foot trailer. It was a beautiful box, if you can call it that. Polished dark cherry wood with gleaming brass handles. A casket? They didn't strap it down like regular freight. They secured it to a pallet that was bolted to the floor of my trailer. It wasn't going anywhere. Before I sealed the doors, one of the men put a hand on my arm. He was an older fellow with sad eyes. "Drive careful," he said, his voice low. "You're carrying someone's whole world back there." I just nodded, unable to speak. I locked the trailer, the click of the latch echoing in the silence of the loading bay. As I pulled out onto the street, I glanced in my side mirror at the long, empty expanse of the trailer behind me. Except it wasn't empty. It had one passenger, one piece of cargo, right in the center. The drive east was worse than the drive west. The storm had passed, leaving behind a clear, brutally cold day. The sky was a sharp, unforgiving blue. Every mile that brought me closer to Wyoming felt like a mile closer to a reckoning. I couldn't stop thinking about what was behind me. The silence from the trailer was deafening. It was heavier than any load of steel or produce I'd ever hauled. I felt like a hearse driver, a modern-day Charon, ferrying a soul across a frozen wasteland. I had the radio cracked up, listening to country music, talk shows, anything to fill the cab with noise to keep the thoughts at bay. But underneath it all, the silence from the trailer was always there. I started to imagine things. A soft thump when I hit a pothole, a faint sliding sound when I took a turn too fast. I knew it was just my mind playing tricks on me. The crate was bolted down. It couldn't move. But the feeling that I was not alone, it was growing with every rotation of my wheels. The legend was real. The first part had come true, and I was driving headlong back toward the place
where it all started. Dropping that casket in Omaha was like shrugging off a mountain. The moment it was out of my trailer, I could breathe again. The air in the cab even seemed to smell cleaner. The guys at the funeral home were professional, quiet. They didn't say a word, just did their job. I signed the paperwork, got my confirmation code, and drove my empty rig to the nearest truck stop. I sat in the diner, stirring a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold, and made a promise to myself. I would never drive that stretch of I-80 in Wyoming again. Never. I'd take the long way around, I'd take a pay cut, I'd quit if I had to. Some things aren't worth the money. For a few blissful months, it worked. I got runs down south, out to the west coast, up to the northeast. I put thousands of miles between me and that way station. The memory started to fade, to feel like a bad dream. I almost convinced myself I had imagined it all. The blizzard, the glow-em sign, the chill of that final delivery. I was back to laughing at the ghost stories with the other drivers, though my laughter felt a little hollow now.
Then the market tightened up. Fuel prices went through the roof, shipping contracts got lean, and the company started trimming the fat. The cushy long-haul routes became fewer and farther between. Dispatch started giving me the shorter, less desirable runs. I was just grateful to be working. One Tuesday morning, my phone buzzed. It was a new load assignment. Picking up a trailer of dry goods in Reno, destination Chicago. I pull up the route on my GPS. My stomach dropped. Right through the heart of Wyoming. I-80, straight past it. I called dispatch immediately. "Can't you find another way?" I asked, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. The weather reports for Wyoming look bad. It was a lie. The forecast was clear for the next week. The dispatcher, a woman named Carol who had been doing this for 20 years and had the patience of a hungry bear, wasn't having it. "The route is the route," she said flatly. "It's the most direct, saves on fuel. You got a problem with the route?" I thought about the casket. I thought about the glowing numbers. How could I explain it? "There's a bad stretch of road out there, real bad. I'd rather avoid it." "Every road has a bad stretch," she scoffed. "You want the load or not? Because I got a dozen other drivers who'd be happy to take it." It was an ultimatum. My job, my paycheck, my ability to pay my bills versus a ghost door. Seen in the bright light of a Tuesday morning, it felt ridiculous. I was a professional, a man of logic. What was I going to do, let a superstition run my life? "No problem," I said, my voice sounding defeated even to myself. "I'll take it." The drive to Wyoming this time was one of pure, gnawing dread. I was hauling dog food, 20 tons of it. I had checked the weight myself when I scaled out of Reno. I knew the number down to the pound. I kept repeating it to myself like a prayer. 78,450 pounds. 78,450 pounds. As I crossed the state line into Wyoming, the sun was setting. The big sky was turning a bruised purple and orange. It was beautiful, but it offered me no comfort. The landscape flattened out, the world grew quiet, and I knew I was getting close. My hands were sweating on the steering wheel. I turned off the radio. I needed to concentrate, to listen. My eyes scanned the darkness ahead. Every distant flicker of light made my heart leap into my throat. And then I saw it. Miles away still, but unmistakable. A tiny, faint pinprick of orange light, appearing and disappearing in the vast blackness. It wasn't a trick of the light this time. There was no blizzard to hide it. It was on. It was waiting for me.
I gripped the wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My whole body was tense, a coiled spring of fear. "Just stay dark, just stay dark. Let me pass, please." I was begging, bargaining with a ghost on the side of the road. I got closer. The shape of the station resolved itself out of the gloom. The flickering intensified. It wasn't just the flicker now. The sign was fully brilliantly lit, a burning orange scar on the night. I braced myself for the numbers. I knew what my weight was, 78,450. Seeing it would be terrifying, but at least I'd know what to expect. Another coffin.
I can handle that again. I had to. But as I pulled alongside the scale, my eyes locked on the sign, my blood turned to ice. It wasn't numbers. It wasn't my weight. It was just two words, glowing with an unholy intensity, seeming to pulse with the rhythm of my own terrified heartbeat. Overweight.
The world went silent. The rumble of my diesel, the whine of the tires on the asphalt, it all faded away, replaced by the roar of blood in my ears. Overweight. The word hung in the air long after the sign was in my rearview mirror. It wasn't a warning about a future trip. It was a declaration about right now. My training, my instincts, everything screamed at me to keep driving, never stop for anything on a dark, empty highway. But I couldn't. I was hauling dog food, not lead plates. There was no way I was actually overweight. The implications of that sign, of the second part of the legend, were churning in my gut. It means you're not alone. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely keep the rig straight. I saw the reflective markers for a rest area a few miles ahead and aimed for it like a ship seeking a lighthouse in a storm. I pulled the truck into the loneliest corner of the deserted lot, the hiss of the air brakes sounding like a gasp of terror. For a moment, I just sat there in the dark cab, engine idling, staring at the empty passenger seat beside me. The vinyl seemed to hold a shadow that the cabin lights couldn't touch.
Okay, I whispered to myself, my voice trembling. Okay, let's be rational. Maybe the scales were broken. Maybe it was a prank. Some kids with a generator and a laptop messing with truckers. It had to be. I grabbed my heaviest mag light flashlight from behind the seat, its metal body cold and solid in my hand. My heart was pounding like a drum solo as I stepped out of the cab. The Wyoming wind hit me instantly, a physical blow, cold and smelling of sagebrush and an empty eternity. The trailer loomed behind me, a vast, silent box of secrets. I walked to the back, the crunch of my boots on the gravel the only sound. My breath plumed in the frigid air. The company seal on the latch was intact. No one had opened these doors since I left Reno. With a deep, shaky breath, I broke the seal with my bolt cutters. I took the heavy lock in my hand. It was cold as a block of ice. I undid the latch and pulled. The heavy door groaned open on its hinges, revealing the pitch-black interior. I aimed the beam of the mag light inside. It cut a clean white circle through the darkness. The beam swept over towering pallets of dog food bags, shrink-wrapped and stacked neatly, exactly as I had left them. I moved the light through the narrow walkway down the center, back and forth from the doors all the way to the front wall of the trailer. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. No person, no animal, no extra cargo. Just 20 tons of kibble.
I stood there for a long time, the flashlight beam trembling slightly. A wave of relief washed over me, so potent it made me dizzy. It was a malfunction. A stupid, terrifying prank, that's all. I slammed the door shut, my laughter sounding thin and hysterical in the cold night air. I latched the door, feeling like an idiot, and walked back towards my cab. But as I passed the gap between the tractor and the trailer, a sudden, intense cold spot hit me. It was a pocket of air so frigid, it felt like I had walked into a meat locker. It stole my breath and raised goosebumps all over my arms. I took one more step, and it was gone, back to the normal Wyoming cold. I stopped, turned, and scanned the area. Nothing. Just my truck and the shadows it cast under the sickly yellow lights of the rest area. Shaking my head, trying to dismiss it, I climbed back into the cab. I settled into the driver's seat. The familiar worn leather, small comfort, but the feeling of relief was gone. The cab felt different, colder, smaller, crowded. I glanced at the passenger seat, still empty. I looked on the passenger side mirror, just the side of my trailer and the dark road behind me, but I couldn't shake the feeling.
the unshakable, terrifying certainty of a presence, the feeling of being watched. I knew, with a certainty that defied all logic, that when I searched the trailer, I had been looking in the wrong place. Whatever had gotten on board at that way station wasn't in the back. It was in the cab with me.
Leaving that rest stop was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Every instinct told me to get out of the truck, to run into the night and not look back. But where would I go? I was in the middle of nowhere, and this rig was my life. So I put it in gear, and my hands, slick with sweat, guided the wheel back onto the interstate. The cab, my home on the road, had become a prison cell. The air was heavy, and the profound cold I'd felt outside seemed to have followed me in, settling into the passenger side of the truck. I had the heater blasting on high, but I couldn't stop shivering. I kept my eyes glued to the road, but my peripheral vision was on fire, imagining movement, a flicker of shadow just out of sight. Then the radio started acting up. It had been playing a classic rock station from Cheyenne, but now it devolved into static. Not normal static, but a rhythmic, pulsing hiss, and underneath it, I could almost hear a voice, a low, faint whisper lost in the noise. I reached out and shut it off, plunging the cab into an unnerving silence. The silence was worse. In the quiet, I could hear things, or thought I could. A soft sigh, timed perfectly with my own exhale. The faint creak of the passenger seat, as if someone had just shifted their weight. I stared so hard at the road ahead that my eyes started to water, terrified that if I glanced over, I would actually see someone sitting there.
An hour passed, 2 hours. My entire body was a single clenched muscle of terror. The GPS on my dash suddenly flickered. It rerouted, the pleasant female voice announcing, "In a quarter mile, make a slight right turn." A right turn? I was on the interstate. There were no turns for another 100 miles. I looked at the screen. The new route it was showing was a thin, gray line peeling off the thick blue of the highway, leading to nowhere. It was an old access road, probably long abandoned. As I got closer, my headlights caught a glint of metal by the side of the road. A small, simple cross, the kind people put up to mark a place where someone died. And in that split second, I saw him. It wasn't a direct sight, it was a reflection. For a fraction of a second, the light from a passing car illuminated the inside of my cab, and in the reflection of my driver's side window, I saw the silhouette of a man in the passenger seat. He was thin, gaunt, wearing an old-fashioned trucker's cap. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking out the window, his face a mask of sorrow, pointing a spectral hand toward the cross on the side of the road.
I yelled, a raw, guttural scream of pure terror. I swerved, the truck groaning in protest as the tires screamed on the pavement. I wrenched the wheel back, my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest. Horns blared behind me. I had nearly sideswiped another truck. I didn't slow down. I pushed the accelerator to the floor. The engine roared, and I flew down that highway, putting as much distance as I could between me and that phantom turnoff, that roadside cross. I didn't know who he was. A trucker who'd missed his exit, one who took a turn he shouldn't have in a blizzard just like the one I'd driven through. I didn't want to know. I just knew he was a ghost chained to that piece of road, and his curse was that way station. When it registered overweight, it meant he'd climbed aboard for a ride. I didn't stop until the sun came up. I blew past my scheduled fuel stop, past the rest area where I was supposed to take my break. I drove until the sky was pale and gray with the promise of morning, and I could see the lights of his city in the distance. When I finally pulled into a massive, brightly lit truck stop in Nebraska, I practically fell out of the cab, gasping for air like a drowning man. The cab was empty. The cold was gone. Whatever had been riding with me had gotten off where it needed to go. I finished the run to Chicago running on autopilot, my mind a blank slate of shock. I dropped the trailer, bobtailed back to my company's yard, and walked him to the office. I put my keys on the dispatcher's desk. I'm done, I said, taking some time off. I never went back. I sold my house, moved to a town where the biggest road is a 2-lane county highway, and I took a job in a warehouse. I still wake up some nights, the engine rumbles still in my ears, the feeling of cold vinyl on the seat next to me. So let me tell you, if you're ever out on I-80 in Wyoming and you see the lights of a dead way station flicker on, you push that accelerator to the floor. Don't slow down. Don't look. And you pray to whatever God you believe in that it doesn't want to weigh you, because it might weigh your soul. Or it might just find out that you have room for one more.